Hi, my name is Mary Morgan, and I want to thank you for inviting me to speak with your group and to share my writing experience. Now, you are librarians, you're familiar with books. Some of you probably have thought, how could I ever become an author? Now, maybe some of you have dabbled into writing. Some of you might be authors yourselves, but I do want to share what happened with me and possibly encourage you that maybe one day you could become an author in your favorite genre of book as well. I grew up having a passion for reading. I learned to read when I was real young, and for me it was always a pleasure to read. I always had my nose in a book. And I have 5 younger brothers and sisters, and before they went to kindergarten, I lined them all up on the steps going up to our bedrooms, and I taught them how to read. I wanted them to learn new things and to just enjoy reading like I did. I have always loved mystery reading, and as well as other things, but mysteries were always my favorite. So for me, I gravitated towards Trixie Belden as a youngster, Nancy Drew, Cherry Ames, and then later on went into Mary Higgins Clark, John Grisham. And since we live here in Lansing, Michigan now, there was a local author. His name was Richard Baldwin, who wrote the Michigan Mystery Murder Series. And we always enjoyed his books because they were clean. They didn't have obscene language or things that really didn't apply to the plot. And so we appreciated clean writing like that. And it kind of made me always want to maybe try my own hand at writing. I would write long letters, I would write articles and things like that, but I never really got into writing books. But I would tell people someday I would like to write books for kids, and they would mention it to me and remind me. In 2008, I attended a writers' conference for the first time. I sat there and I absorbed everything they had to say. I took notes, and it was like I heard all the facts of what does it take to get published and getting a good editor. You got to have an agent. And I thought, oh my goodness. Well, I went home full of new ideas, wanting to try my hand at things. And then in 2009, I went back again to absorb more information that they were sharing. And then I kind of got discouraged because I thought, what are editors and agents and publishers really looking for these days? What's new under the sun that will get published? And I heard statistics of how many thousands of query letters are submitted every year and never accepted. And I went home thinking, I will never get published. But I always had this desire, I'm going to start writing, because then at that point, self-publishing was rising and was getting a little bit more respect. So I thought, fine, I'll just start writing. Maybe someday somebody will look at my work and I'll get picked up. So I learned one of the major points was find a niche. What is it that you can really write from your heart? What are your passions? And I thought, well, I love to travel. I'd been to many national parks. I like mysteries. I take pictures wherever we go. I journal. And I thought, I think I'd like to write mysteries for kids set in national parks. A number of the speakers would say, check out the competition that you have in your niche market. And I went looking, and there were very few books for kids set in a national park. I did find 1 or 2 authors, and I thought, great, I think maybe I could start writing a book set in a national park. I'd been to Mount Rushmore 3 or 4 times at that time, so I thought, I'm just going to start writing a book about Mount Rushmore. For me, doing research is a pleasure. I would go to the internet, I would look up books and read different things, and found information on Mount Rushmore and started writing. Well, one of my friends became the bookkeeper to the local author, Richard Baldwin, that we enjoyed reading. And in fact, we had just met him at a street festival in a town right near Lansing called DeWitt. And he had autographed a book and he agreed to have his picture taken with us. And I thought, that's really, really cool. So we read that book, and then I was telling our friends all about his books, and my friend who became his bookkeeper said, hey, do you want to meet Richard someday? And we thought that would just be great. Well, at this point, I was a member of a writers group in Grand Ledge. Some of the people from the Writers Conference all were in a group in Grand Ledge, which connects to Lansing, and they invited me to join them. And I told them, and they were always looking for new ideas, and I said, hey, my friend is a bookkeeper for a mystery writer. Could I invite him to come to our meeting, and he could talk about mystery plots, characters, taking a character from one book to another book, how to sustain things like this. And so she asked him, and he agreed, and we met up, and I was driving the 13 miles out to Grand Ledge and just pumping him with all kinds of questions and like that. And then as he spoke, I had more questions. And afterwards he said, Mary, what is it that you really want to do? And I said, I want to write mysteries for kids set in national parks similar to yours, because he has no sex, profanity, or violence in his books, which he told us that day. I said, I want to have good morals and just respect for adults and like that in my books. And he said, I like your ideas. I'll publish your work. Now, without even reading one sentence of what I had written, he was like saying, I'll publish your work. He said, let's do lunch with Kay today on our way home. So we did, and he kept feeling me out, and he said, I like the idea. How about if you submit your first story in a month? And I said, oh dear, now this is the first week of November, and I said, I can't do it by then. I have to survive the holidays. And my friend said, she needs to survive the holidays, because she knew that I write the kids' Christmas program for our church, and we directed it, and it's a pretty big deal. So he said, fine, then I will give you to the first week of January. And I thought, well, that's not a whole lot longer, but I will make that work, because I had such a desire to have success at this that I completed the Christmas program. It was a huge success, fun times, and then I could devote my evenings to writing my new book. I worked during the day, so I went at home at night. I sat down, typed like crazy, and within 3 weeks, I had my first book written. I sent it over to him. He went to Panera's, read it in one setting, and he said, I like it, let's run with it. Totally blew me out of the water, because I didn't have an agent, I didn't have an editor, but all of a sudden I have a publisher within a month. So it was kind of a fairy tale story, but it was really the beginning of a learning adventure for me. And this has been a decade now that I've been doing this. And I do encourage people, no matter your age, don't think you're too old to start anything, because you really, truly are not. And I would encourage you, whatever your favorite genre is, be it poetry, wanting to write your memoirs, doing a historical fiction, or a nonfiction book, whatever you want to come up with, try your hand at it. You're into books. You've read plenty, and you know what people enjoy reading. So anyway, for me, I was so excited. I said to him, I should back up. I said to him that day at lunch, my first book is all about halfway done. He said, what is it? I said, it is at Mount Rushmore. He said, oh no, I write Michigan books. I need your first book to be set in Michigan. And I thought, oh, really? Well, a national park I had just been to was up in the UP. I spent a half a day there. I could rely on my memory. Well, for me, what's really cool with national parks is they have maps, brochures, all kinds of information that they will send you. So I contacted the park, and they sent me all this information, which I did all this research and came up with a fun story. When I do my books, I work closely with a ranger so that I interview them, they give me the inside scoop. They're quite excited to make their park a little bit more famous in a book. So they're very, very cooperative. And a lot of times I get their names, and I do get permission to include their names into my book. So that's where I come from in mind, is that it does take a lot of work. You can't just sit down and just come up with a story, because for me, I like boys and girls to learn new things. My books are geared for kids 7 to 11 or 12, depending on their reading level, and I fill them with history and geography. My first book I wrote is called Stolen Treasures at Pictured Rocks. This is set up in the Upper Peninsula, right along Lake Superior in Munising Bay, the area of the logging industry. This has the shipping industry with the Great Lakes. I threw in things that I thought kids would really enjoy learning about, maybe going there on a vacation themselves and experiencing. So it's some guiding principles that I came up with on my own to put in here. Well, I had the manuscript written, and I took it to the local elementary school right near my home, and I presented it to the principal, and I said, would you please just read this book for age-appropriate content? She read it, and she got back with me, and she said, Mary, every Michigan 3rd to 5th grader needs to read this book, because it's all the history and geography that they learn in those units in those 3 years of school. And I thought, well, that's a good hot tip. So I determined in all of my books to put history and geography to please teachers, because I kind of had in my mind I'd like to go into schools and visit. When I was at the Writers' Conference, some of the presenters would say how they took their books for children into schools, read to them, and it's really beefed up all of their sales. So I thought, well, if it worked for them, maybe it would work for me. So I told the principal's recommendation to my publisher, and he said, great. Well, he had an artist that he's worked with come up with the artwork. He let me have some choices and decisions in the pictures that I wanted at the various scenes throughout the book, and he even allowed me to design the cover. A lot of times publishers just take over from there and they have their own people do it, but my publisher is very kind, and he let me come up with things that I thought would be kind of great for covers, going from one book to the next book to the next book, because I had hopes and dreams for a series. So the National Parks logo is an arrowhead. It looks like this with the point down here at the bottom. Well, you can't copyright anything, so I took their National Park arrowhead and I flipped it upside down, and we came up with this on the cover of every book. So inside the cover is the title and some of the action of the story, that kids can look at it and gravitate towards it and think, oh wow, because in the title it will be like Stolen Treasures at Pictured Rocks. So I let kids know where it's going to be, and then hopefully the cover will draw them in and make them want to get into the book. Well, one real cool thing is I returned to the Writers' Conference again, and I attended an extended seminar that they were doing for children's writing, and I talked to the presenter who had 8 million books out on the market already, and I said, could you just read 2 or 3 chapters of my book, and it was almost ready for printing, and just give me a little bit of advice on it. And he read the first 3 chapters, and he said to me, Mary, take chapter 3, put it in chapter 1, and move 1 and 2 back. Then you will have a better sequence. And he said, if you actionate your first page, you will hook your reader and they will keep turning the page. He said, kids have a remote in one hand and your book in the other hand. What will they put down? And for those of you who are familiar with Bill Myers, he was the one that gave me this really great tip. And he's gone on and had millions more books sold. So I did, and yes, the first book, the first page has a big hook on it. And kids do want to turn the page. I also learned let every chapter end with a cliffhanger so that they go on to the next chapter. And it has proven to be true. When I went to these writing conferences, I just took notes. I put so many of the things I put into practice, I learned and I just absorb everything and want to make my books most successful. Well, the whole editing, proofreading process, typesetting, I learned so much in this, and I thought, okay, I am going to try to make every succeeding book good so that it's not a big, arduous task. And I think my publisher always appreciated all that I put into it just to help him along with the process. And I always had in mind the pictures that I wanted and worked with the artist, and I tried to make it fun. Now, people say, how did you choose your characters for your books? Well, my husband is a pastor, and I have lots of kids in my life. So I chose two really strong characters, a set of twins, a girl and a boy. There are a lot of girl series out there on the market, but not so much for boys. So I decided I'm going to let the boy be the dominant character. And it surely has proven to be good, because Ben their real names are Ethan and Hannah. And here is what they look like. They were only 9 years old when I first started. And real cute kids. They run, they jump, they dive, they do airsoft, they ski, they just are winter skiers and summer skiers. They love all kinds of outdoor adventure. So for me, they were the perfect kids to choose. And now I put their picture in the back of the book so that when readers are reading, young readers are reading, I tell them, go to the back. You can see a picture of Hannah and Ethan, who I call Ben and Becca. So Ben is the dominant character. Becca, a little bit more reticent, and she takes courage from her brother. But both kids are famous for something, and I let Ben have binoculars. So binoculars help him to see things up closer. It helps him solve a mystery once in a while. Becca, she always takes her camera wherever she goes. And this has helped solve the mystery. So I do let her take the lead at times, and Ben is right there by her. And it has the choice has been proven to be a good one, because other twin sets are like, that's us, that's really us. And I'm just happy to be able to relate to kids like that. And as the family, now the setting is the dad is a newspaper reporter here in Lansing for the Lansing State Journal newspaper, which kind of lends itself nicely for the kids having a nose for the news and things like that. And each book is different, varied, and I let there be different themes, which is kind of fun. The family, they're campers. So in this one, Pictured Rocks has a lot of campgrounds. So you can go up there and camp. And in each book, I let Ben and Becca meet somebody new. And I ask all of my characters to submit their 5th grade picture, or 4th grade, something around there, that they would fit into the age of the book. And it's just kind of fun in each book to have somebody new. I do make it diverse for nationalities and all the different themes that I have, so that kids from the local areas can pick up a book and say, hey, I know that. So it's really kind of fun. Now, because I like a mystery, and the kids all seem to like mysteries, what I do, I have a little mystery code at the back of each book where the kids can decipher the code and find out where are the Coopers going next, because this is the only clue and they really don't get a definitive answer as to where it is, but it makes them want to go find the next book and buy it. Now in the back here, now Becca, she always travels with her travel trivia book. She has all kinds of information in this book, and she says to her family, FYI, for your information. Then she'll start quoting facts, and we'll show them things that are important about the national park where they're going to go to. There might be a poem, a camping recipe, things like that. So in the back of each book, I have what's called Becca's FYI, for your information. And I have maps and fun things that kids can learn from, so that if they have to do a book report, I tell them, I've already done it for you. But there's pictures and things that are just kind of cool that will make them want to go to the parks and live it out. Many school principals buy my book, and then they take their families there over the course of the summer. And then next year, they come back, they get the next book, and they go there. And it's just kind of fun for families. It's just kind of like a real travel book that they can take with them. And it's just been, like I said, a learning process, but I always want them to be different. And for me, I try to think, okay, what can be a different theme? What can be important for the family to go there and travel? Well, my second book did end up being about Mount Rushmore. It's called The Face at Mount Rushmore. Each one will have, the title will have a little clue as to something that's going on. And of course, Mount Rushmore, the famous faces, but something happens that Becca happens to take a picture of somebody's face, and it helps solve the mystery. Well, in this one, I know that most kids love dogs, so a service dog becomes the hero. Like I said, I just like things to be different and varied, so I thought we're going to let a service dog work with the kids. Now, I do have a guiding principle in all of my books. Rangers and my main characters will never do anything wrong. The golden rule runs through all of my books so that the kids are doing to others and treating the environment the way that they know it should be treated. And that's what is important here. This one is all about geology, and out there in South Dakota is the Lakota Sioux Indian Reservation. So in this one, I did some research. I got permission to use pictures and pronunciation in the Lakota Sioux Indian language about what are bears called, what are bison called. Well, bison are called tatunkas. So I encourage kids, learn this kind of stuff so that you can maybe sound really smart one day and you can quiz other people. But also I bring in things about the flag and the history of what it took to make Mount Rushmore. Every night there is a flag lowering ceremony. They fold the flags with Boy Scouts. They get to fold the flag in 13 folds, and so I introduced that to my readers, even important things that would be good for them to know. And if they're Boy Scouts, they maybe can go there to Mount Rushmore and get to fold the flag one night with a ranger. In 2013, there was a special celebration going on in Gettysburg over in Pennsylvania. So I said to my publisher, I'd really like to sell books in Gettysburg. He said, okay, well then get writing. So I studied about the Battle of Gettysburg, and it was a pretty gruesome sight. And I thought, I really don't want to focus on all that death and dying and the situation there. So this one I turned around and I thought, what were kids playing in the 1860s? What games did they enjoy? So this one becomes a competition of kids from the North and kids from the South. It is all about the games that kids played. And I have learned that they played jacks and marbles and hoop and sticks and shuttlecock, which is our badminton, and they did stilt racing. And that's what this was. It's just kind of a fun competition. The kids, it was a 5th grade field trip, and the kids had to get old clothes, sleep in old tents, eat the food that they ate back then. So it's kind of educational for what it was like to live back in the 1860s. And in this one, I introduced the telegraph, and even that President Lincoln sold his own, he sent his own generals telegrams that he knew they would get the message. So this one's kind of fun. And this one I start bringing in all of my nieces and nephews who live in the North and the South. So that's kind of fun. Now, for me, one of the ways that I ended up getting an idea for my next book was in Country Magazine. And it's hard sometimes to come up with new things, and this just jumped out at me. And it was winter in Yellowstone. Millions of people go to Yellowstone every summer, but not many can go there in the winter. They get up to 50 feet of snow in the upper elevations, and they shut down most things. There's 2 hotels left open, one near Old Faithful and one near Mammoth Hot Springs. And so I thought, let's write a book set at Yellowstone, since it was our first national park, at Christmas time. So I did a ton of research on what does it take for animals to survive in Yellowstone. And they all come down from the upper elevations and they hover around the hot springs, the geysers, because Yellowstone used to be a huge volcano, and when it's set after it erupted, it's settled, and there are all these hot geyser basins. And so the animals go there, and I tell kids, imagine your mom looking out the hotel window and you see a bison or an elk or a moose out there by the door. And would she want to go cross country skiing if those animals were there? And it's kind of fun things like that I do. There is a winter rescue, because that does happen every year. People go too far and then they get lost and they have to be rescued. So I introduce to kids, what does it take to rescue somebody if you're out there? Well, this one, the kids become what's called junior rangers, and in every park, they do have a junior ranger book. You can go through it, you can do the assignments and find all the things, and then they give you a little badge or a pin at the end if you get it all completed. Well, in this setting, all the kids there become junior rangers, and they're out there taking a skiing lesson when they realize something happened and one of their kids got hurt. Well, they took refuge in a den where an animal would be, and that kind of spurred my title, and it's called Snow Den at Yellowstone, because there are a lot of places where animals take refuge in like little caves and dens. Well, when I'm talking to boys and girls in schools, I say, when you're an author, you can come up with a clever title, and it's called Snow Den at Yellowstone. Well, if you say it quickly, it's Snowed In at Yellowstone, so that kids will think, oh, are they snowed in or are they in a snow den? So it's fun things like this that kids do get to learn and think about, and it kind of spurs them on to writing their own stories, coming up with clever things like this. In this one, I did a little bit of research, and I came up with a recipe on how to make snow ice cream. And you really can do it. And since we live in most of us live in northern areas where there is snow, you can do it easily, and it does taste like a Wendy's Frosty if you put chocolate syrup in it. So this one is kind of a fun one to introduce in the winter settings. Now, everybody has heard of the Grand Canyon. Everybody has a hope maybe someday to get to see the Grand Canyon. The first time I ever went there, I stood on the edge of the South Rim looking across at the North Rim and thought, how can this much beauty exist in one place? Here I am there at a ledge. There is a trail. It's a 9-mile trail that leads down to the bottom of the canyon. And my husband and I, we started down on this. It's called the Bright Angel Trail. It was 28 degrees, and then there were 55-mile-an-hour winds, and it was about to snow. The wind felt like it was going to push me right into the canyon. There are no guardrails. You're just walking on a very narrow path, and it's the most amazing feeling. But I wanted to do it for a while just to say I got to walk the Bright Angel Trail until I couldn't. But in the summertime, it gets very hot, and there's so many warnings and like that. So I introduced that for the children to learn what it's like. They do have donkey trails donkey trains, that do bring some people up and down into the canyon. And they do warn you, you should stay up against the wall of the mountain and let the donkeys walk in front of you. And so it's things like that. I like to put in the book for the children to learn, because rangers, they do give me their dangers, and they tell me, put them in the book and let the kids know so that they know before they go. And always in Grand Canyon, there is the potential of going over the edge if you get too close. My own son thought he had to scare me to death when we were there, and he kept looking over the edge, and it was a very frightening thing. So this one has thrills and chills before there's a spill over the edge into the Grand Canyon. And the kids are involved in a real rescue for helping somebody else who has fallen onto a ledge. So it's even things like this. But I asked the ranger, what's your worst crime at Grand Canyon? And she said, we really don't have a crime in Grand Canyon. I said, well, what can go wrong? And she said, well, there is something that does go on. Down there at the bottom of the canyon, they have what's called Phantom Ranch. They have campgrounds, and you have to walk down and walk back up, and there is no easy way down or up, except if you have to be rescued. But Anyway, things go on every time somebody's camping down there and nobody can understand why it happens. And then all of a sudden it's discovered what's going on. This is a family reunion setting. And kids who had never met each other are thinking their cousins are stealing their stuff. What's really happening? And so it's one more little thing that even adults say, I didn't see that happening. So it's just kind of fun, even when adults who read mysteries say, Mary, you come up with the most clever things. Well, I can thank Rangers for that one. Now, I like to have my settings in different parts of the country. And so I thought, we're going over to Florida because I have been to the Everglades National Park. Now, I've been to up to now about 60 national parks, and they're not all parks. They're like the waterfalls, the monuments, the battlefields, and like that. But there's 403, so I have a long ways to go. But I've been to the Everglades, and it's just a cool place to go. And in this one, I introduced the ecosystem. And like I said, I like to do things that are teacher-friendly as well as kid-friendly. So this one is science and the ecosystem. And as I was there not too long ago, I thought, man, somebody's eating something all the time. But it's interesting to do all the research on this because all the different parts of the park, and there are 3 main parts, that you can do really cool things. And they have what's called a triathlon, where you can ride a bike around Shark Valley. And there's no sharks there, just a lot of alligators. And then you can walk in the swamp, and that's taking a slog in the slough, or you can canoe out in the 10,000 Island area. And it's really all things that families can do. So my husband and I, we experienced it. And just a little side note, when we were there, well, before I went, I learned that down in the Everglades, of course, it's just water all over the place, and grass is about a foot tall, and it's usually just about up to your calf. And when I studied about the slog and the slough, you go in there and you study all about the algae and all the things, and you learn that there's 1 million alligators in the state of Florida, over 100,000 python in the Everglades, water moccasins, and then down in the ocean are all the crocodiles, and they all exist in this ecosystem. And when we went there, we signed up to do the slog and the slough, and we met with the ranger, and there were about 12 of us, and she told us we'd have a walking stick. You have to wear long pants tucked into your socks in sneakers with double knots, because when you go walking in this mucky slough, or it's just a swamp, your feet sink inches down, and you have to bring your feet up every time to take a step, and that's why you need your walking stick to stabilize you. And like I said, normally it's only this deep. Well, they had just gotten 12 inches of rain. And she's looking around, and she said, so the water's a lot deeper. And she looked at me, and I'm the shortest one, and I'm only 5 feet tall. She said, and little bird, it's going to be up to your waist. Now, there's a lot of difference between here and my waist. And I'm thinking, oh my soul. Well, we decided to do it anyway. And sure enough, you take 2 steps out into the swamp and you're just about ready to fall over because you're so unstable. And she took us out to study the cypress grove, a football field distance away. And we were there an hour, and there's no fast way to get in there or out of there if eyeballs are watching you. Now remember, 1 million alligators, 100,000 pythons, all these water moccasins, and not one fence to keep them away from you. And that is what went through my mind. And the crazy part is, we were up to water up to near my waist, and I said to my husband, oh no, my shoe's coming off my foot. And he couldn't just bend over into the water and grab my shoe, and I couldn't lift my foot because I would have lost it. And if you lose your shoe, you will never find it because the water becomes sandy colored muck. And so I left my foot in my shoe, and he had to reach down as far as he could without putting his face in the water to find my shoe and to try to tie it underwater. It was quite the feat, but I'm glad he did, because you're walking along and little cypress trees are sticking up like little pointy things, and then all this tall grass, and to try to walk in my sock foot would have just been impossible. So especially thankful that he did that. But I learned a lot, and we took tons of pictures, and we did learn that the closest alligator was only a half a mile away from us. And that was like several hours prior. Who knows if he was stalked out there behind the grove waiting for us. But anyway, that was kind of a really cool one. And I do tell kids, be careful when you're riding the bike on the paved path around Shark Valley. There's no way out. You just have to keep going all the way around to 15 miles. But the alligators are 8 feet long, and that is as wide as the path is. And yes, you will encounter them sunning themselves along the path. And so rangers tell the kids, go around the tail or else the mouth will snap at you and tip you over. Now, here we go. I got to move right along because I have so much more to tell you. And so, oh dear, yes, I forgot to mention about the camping. This is so cool. In my research, I learned that the only place, and there are many places you can camp, there's only one place that has flush toilets and a shower. And I thought, if I ever went there, I would want to stay at the campground that had flush toilets and showers. So it's called Monument Lake Campground. Well, the ranger told me there's the lake, then you have the campers around the lake, and then you have like a little dirt path that goes around the whole area, and then they put the tents back here. Well, we went there to scope it out and get pictures. Sure enough, wonderful lake. Here's campers, but there are 13 feet long alligators sunning themselves right by the campers. And no joke, they are right there within feet of the campers. No wonder they put the tenters on the other side of the little dirt road, because the alligators don't go that far. But imagine you in your camper looking out, ready to roll, and you see a huge alligator out there, and they definitely are like monsters. So that would be a deterrent to me. And when I talked to kids in school, I said, would your mom stay there? And of course it's a resounding no, neither would I. But anyway, the Everglades, great place to go, especially if your kids are into camping and learning new things about science. But this one is called Double Trouble in the Everglades. Everybody's a twin. So the real twins meet other sets of twins. I let my grandkids be in this book, even though they're not twins, but they thought it was about time for them to get into a book. So it's kind of fun to always be putting things in the kids can learn, and when they go there, they want to explore the park for themselves. Now, I am truly a history buff. I love to learn history, and a little second grader challenged me to please write a book about Boston National Historical Park. Well, I had been there on service trips with teenagers, and I thought, okay, I'll do some in 2016 when I was writing this. And I thought, okay, I will throw President Kennedy in to bring that in, and I would also bring in the theme of bullying, because it's such a prevalent thing. And I researched with teachers, what are you telling boys and girls now if they are being bullied, and what admonition do you give to kids who are bullies? This becomes a scavenger hunt on the Freedom Trail. And there are 16 historical spots that you can go. So I put little clues at different sites because I've walked the Freedom Trail, and I've been to the Boston Tea Party ships. So I try to tie them together. And this one is called To If by Tea in Boston. And it's just a great history lesson about the Revolutionary War era and what kids can learn. And yes, I do have a bullying situation, and I don't let the bullies win, even though it looked like they were going to win. So many cool things. They get to go on the USS Constitution. They get to experience a lot of the historical things. They learn things, everything about Boston Harbor. This is really cool. And what's really funny is that I've been putting in a lot of young kids from our church into my books. Well, the college students who had been growing up through this time said, Miss Mary, when are we going to be in a book? And I thought, I didn't know you wanted to be in a book. So I had them give me all of their 5th grade pictures, and 6 of them got to be in this book. And it's just kind of fun to see how even older ones want to be in this book. But this one is great. And one thing I did learn, it's really cool, somebody told me you can't use the term the Freedom Trail. It is a copyrighted name unless you send your manuscript to the executive director and they have to read it and approve your writing because they want to make sure that you are treating their trail with respect. So I sent it to Suzanne Taylor. She read it and got back with me and she said, "This is very good. I give you my permission, but are you aware that you may not use a picture of the Old North Church in your book without the permission of the vicar at the church?" And I said, "Oh, wow, that's great to know. I'm going there next week with this work group that we're taking to work out there near Boston. I will just go to the church and ask the pastor for his permission." So sure enough, we went, we worked at this camp for underprivileged kids, and the next Sunday we were in Boston. We arrived at Old North Church at 5 to 11. They locked the doors at 1 minute of, and we had just gotten into our seats and sat down. And after the service, I asked the pastor, "Could I have your permission to put a picture of the Old North Church on the cover and use it inside?" And he said, "If Suzanne Taylor gave you permission to use the Freedom Trail, I will definitely let you have permission to put a picture of it." So we do have a picture with a light beaming out of the steeple, and I think that's such a cool thing. But I rely on people to give me hot tips like that, and it always comes through for me, so I'm extremely, extremely thankful. And this one is just another great one, Boston Cream Pie, the Paul Revere's Ride. I include things that boys and girls may or may not be learning these days. I introduce all the historical characters. I do get permission to use all these things. The National Park Service has a lot of pictures on their websites, and you may use them freely. So all these things I put in here, and things that boys and girls are learning that is so cool. And then my 8th book is Lava Chasers at Volcanoes National Park. Everyone has a dream of going to Hawaii someday, and I have been blessed to be there. And I have gone to the Big Island where an active volcano, Kilauea, has gone off numerous times. And in 2018, we went there, and the day that we arrived, the ranger said to us, "Kilauea just started steaming yesterday. It's going to erupt soon. We don't know exactly when, but soon." So I did all this research. We were on the islands for a couple weeks, and we got home, and 2 days later it erupted with great fierceness. And a lot of the places that we got to see and experience, the lava tube, the Jagger Museum, so many things are now destroyed. The crater is so much bigger now, and it's sad, but I have pictures of what it looked like. And so when I go into schools and I talk to boys and girls, I show them this is what it was like, but this is what a volcano can do to change things. And what's really interesting is on the front, you see a guy, and in all of my research, I thought, let's include something different, like cutting down coconuts. Well, in my research, I learned it really correlates a lot of things about an eruption, what's going on in the atmosphere, what's going on in the ocean. It goes along with the STEM program that kids are learning, the curriculum at school, the science, technology, engineering, and math. So I got with a teacher here in Lansing, and I said, "Would you work with me on this and help me with volcanoes?" She said, "Boys and girls learn all about volcanoes in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in school in their sciences." I thought, oh my goodness, this is so cool. So in every level, she taught me all about the tectonic plates and what's going on in the ocean, what's going on in the air, all the earthquakes. And then I did a research, and sure enough, in the 2 weeks we were there, 80,000 earthquakes were taking place. Everything shifts in the ocean, and a lot of things underground and in the atmosphere. And I put all that in the book because I had it published in 2019, and in the back I have actual pictures of what took place in this most recent eruption. But I let the kids see the chain of islands. I teach them about King Kamehameha, all the history of Hawaii. And what's really cute is I had a little gal that was always proclaiming herself to be my most #1 fan. Her name was Lily, and she lives here in East Lansing. And she would come to craft shows where I would be at, and she'd bring me gifts and send me letters. And she even went out west and sent me postcards from parks, and it was really cute. And she said, "Can I please be in a book?" Well, if you study the history of Hawaii, the last queen was Liliuokalani. And so I said to Lily, "You know what? You can be Queen Lily." Oh my goodness, that was the best gift to little Lily. So anyway, I had her give me her picture. And what's too funny is that a teen boy from Massachusetts and a teen girl from New Hampshire said, "Can we please be in your books?" And I had them send me their pictures. So in this one, I have science clubs. They're called news science clubs. North, east, west, south. And then I let Hawaii have their own science club. So news, if you spell it N-E-W-S. And it's always clever stuff like this that your brain's always thinking about. But I have the new science clubs. So in this, boys and girls are doing experiments. They're all given assignments to figure out what's going on at the Black Sand Beach, what's going on at the seismometers, what's going on underground having earthquakes, so many things. And kids realize, wow, we can do these kind of experiments. So that's what it is. And then one of the teams has something happen. And also the twins in the book, they go out to the ancient petroglyphs and they see something that's gone on there. And they work with the rangers. So I tie in everything that rangers tell me are their worst crimes. And it's just kind of fun to introduce things like that to boys and girls. So this one, even I made a molten lava cake so that kids can do the chocolate pudding cakes. It's just kind of fun. I just so enjoy doing that. And not too long ago, I was reading in a magazine and it says, "You're lost on the trail and it's getting dark. What should you do?" And there are recommendations from the National Park Service. Things like this, that's kind of fun. My husband found, now most of you have probably heard that the national parks are America's best idea. Well, he found that in a National Geographic magazine. It was Mr. Bryce, probably who Bryce Canyon was named after. He is the one, and he's from England. He's the one that came up with that phrase. So it's fun things like that that you get ideas, and then you kind of write them down. And I use blue tacky putty, and I put them up on a board so that when I'm writing, a lot of these things are right there by me. And I thought I would just mention, well, I go into schools now, and I've had to reinvent myself. I can't go into schools this year because of COVID. Therefore, I am now doing Zooms and Google Meet. And the other day, I had to do a Google Meet with a school down in South Carolina. So I set up things that I would take to schools. I can't do a slideshow, but I can show them all of my artifacts that I've gotten when I've traveled and like that, and things that tie in with each book, like S'mores Kit. Now at Pictured Rocks, the kids they found a sign that said, "Mind your own business." Well, that kind of ties in, and kids say, "Oh, what's that all about?" And I say, "Hey, you got to read the book to find out who left a message. Mind your own business." Here's the flag that is folded 13 times, the Confederate and Northern flags, the Jacks, the Junior Ranger hat. Now out in Yellowstone, like I said, they get feet and feet of snow. Well, if you take magnifying glass and put it up against a snowflake, you can study its design, and every snowflake is different. And most national parks are out in a dark sky country area. You make sure you always take your flashlight. And then all the things about Boston, Paul Revere's hat. I show them the Ben Franklin. He invented our paper money. Paul Revere, he was a tinsmith. I tell him, if your mom has the pots and pans with copper bottom, that was Paul Revere. Here's another piece from the Revere Company. The seashells out of Florida, the ligulous snail. It glues itself to a tree. It's things like this that I learned. I throw it into the book, and people used to yank these off of trees and sell them. Well, now you can't. It's against the major rule of a national park. You can't take anything out of a park. And so even the state fish of Hawaii, 19 letters in it. Hu'u, pu'u, nu'u, a'a, something like that. The coconuts, things that's kind of fun, the leis in Hawaii. And then this is a picture of Vishnu. I put him on the front cover. He was selling coconuts out of the back of his minivan when we were there. They chop them down, cut off the top, and you get to drink the liquid out of it. Then I took pictures of the crater that was really steaming the day that we were there. So I write these for kids, and little ones would say, what about a book for me? So I had to come up with something different. I read about real places. Well, for little ones, I came up with something totally different. It was called The Runaway Lawnmower. This is for little ones 2 to 5 years old. And it's about a lawnmower who's busy in the summertime, and in the fall he's put into the garage. Well, he doesn't want to be in the garage. So the runaway lawnmower escapes out of the garage, and he sees kids out there having fun in the leaves. So he takes off into the neighbors' yards, and he has his own adventure. He goes this way and that way, and dogs chase him and cats chase him. Well, what is he doing? He is making smiley faces in the leaves so that every time he leaves a smile behind. And it's just kind of a fun, interactive thing for little ones, because as you are reading to them on every page, they're looking for a worm, Willie the Worm. And it's something kind of creative that I came up with. A lady crocheted this, but Willie the Worm is on every page, and it's kind of fun. Well, I was presenting it at a school. Oh, and I should say in the back are downloadable coloring pages. You know, you got to always be thinking of things to make it marketable. So I have downloadable coloring pages from the website. I was presenting this at a school, and the Spanish immersion teacher said, Mary, that is so good. You should have it translated into Spanish. She said, I'll do it for you. She grew up in Mexico, and she did. I don't read Spanish, but she just was so good at it that we won a national award for Spanish literature through the Moonbeam Children's Book Awards. It's kind of cool. I won a national award for a book I can't even read. But it's everybody who has read it said this is the perfect translation. There's 2 versions of Spanish. So anyway, one never knows if you might become an award-winning author. And I should say, my Boston book, yes, this one, this past July, won the Mom's Choice Award. So it's just kind of fun. Always have hope that your books will become a winner. For you, like I said, you might want to write your memoirs. You might want to put your thought into nonfiction or fiction or fantasy. There's always a market for fantasy. So this has been my journey. If you're into writing, there is a group called the Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators. This is really good. They help you to get into schools and different places as speakers, but they always have good seminars and workshops. Jerry Jenkins, who's written has sold millions of books, he puts out things on the internet now for writing, developing your skills. Really, really great at things like that. There's always people that are willing to help you. People have helped me in my 10-year journey. We've now sold about 25,000 books. My wildest dreams are just like flipping out. Unfortunately, my publisher died, and so now I have an agent. Now I'm back at the agent stage, and I'm looking for a publisher. Hopefully after COVID is over and publishing gets back up and moving, I'll end up with a new publisher. But this has been my story. This is how you're always having to think, be creative, ingenious about things, doing a lot of research. Nothing is easy. Nothing just totally drops into your lap. You do have to work at it. You have to be active, but you have a passion for it. And then you have to market your books, because nowadays authors have to help sell their books as well. So I'm always out there trying to sell, going into homeschool conferences, all kinds of schools, festivals, craft shows, just around a lot of places, just wherever kids want to get their hands on a book. And it's just my pleasure. I autograph each one, personalize it if they send me the child's name, and it's kind of fun. And you have business cards. You just do a little self-promotion, and that was a big hurdle for me, is to be able to just push myself forward, but you just kind of work at it, and it comes a little bit easier all the time. And so it's just been quite the journey, and I'm extremely thankful for it. And maybe my story has helped you to think something might be possible for you as well. Because like I tell people, if it happened to me, it can happen to you. And thank you so much.